So, talk us through what happened in 2020 because you've had insight into Agenda 21 for some time. You've seen how government functions on the inside. In 2020, what happened, or 2021? What happened that really made you go, right? That's it. I need to start speaking up about this.
Well, I suppose it started back in 2002 as well. So, the first so-called coronavirus non-pandemic,
Yes.
I was studying it in real time. So I was really aware, you see, because the thing is, the side effects of the vaccines are all the areas that the governments and the EU were putting money into, right? So if you inject people, as particularly children, with poisons, like mercury and aluminium, the toxic effects for them are then allergies, autoimmune disease, intestinal dysfunction like Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis. And then, of course, mercury and aluminium are neurotoxins. So you have neurocognitive impairment that shows in Alzheimer's or metal poisoning of the young, like autism. And then we say Alzheimer's of the elderly. So a lot of the research areas that were being funded and we're saying like, oh, we have a huge, and also of course infertility, we have a huge rise in these areas. So in science, then people were applying for grants to study, autism, Alzheimer's, autoimmune disease, infertility, as if nobody knew what the causes were. But of course, if you're injecting poisons and heavy metals that give these side effects. No one was, it was obvious. The people who weren't injected were not getting these diseases. So then I started to look in the 1990s why that was the case. And then I looked into Agenda 21. And I mean, there was books in the 1970s, written in 1971, called None Dare Call It a Conspiracy, and that laid out Agenda 21. And there was another book in 1992 called The Committee of 300. And that explained exactly this poisoning agenda. And it named, even at that time, all of the people involved, including like Tony Benn and the prime ministers or whatever that was around at the time. And then I was able, because there wasn't so much censorship, and that's why I went into these roles, is to find on the United Nations original documentation around Agenda 21. And that was published in Rio in 1992. Now, we don't need to go into it, but a pharmaceutical industry came into the valley where I grew up when I was around 7 years old, and between 7 and when I was age 21. So this would be in the 80s and 90s. There was a farmer in our valley that was taking a precedence case against the poisoning of the valley against Merck Sharp and Dohme, and he lost over that period, but eventually won in the Supreme Court in Ireland. And my father and our family were one of a number of families that were supporting him and gave evidence, including from the cattle and the calves that died. So what I saw in my childhood was that the governments and the local county councils and all of the agents of the state were not recognizing that there was a poisoning of the valley. And so from my early childhood, I was interested from that case in the law. And also my grandmother and father were very well versed in natural law and justice, which I then spent a lot of my childhood and since. So I suppose I went into science because of that experience of having a pharmaceutical industry poison a valley, and we didn't essentially get justice.
And you said